Hello and thank you for joining FundForum Asia 2017. We're coming to you from the JW Marriott Hotel here in Hong Kong. For the next 15 minutes we're going to have our annual, or our daily I should say, live panel discussion. Now joining me for that discussion is number one Andy Xie, from an economist based in Shanghai and one of the few who predicted the Asian financial crisis in 1997. Thank you Andy for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
JB Beckett, author of New Fund Order and a thought leader in the field of fund strategy.
Hi there.
And over here we've got Steve Monaghan, CEO of Gen Life Insurance and also with AIA, but also a pioneer of organisational innovation and technology. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Andy, I'm going to start with you. Looking at Asia, the asset management business and the role it has, looking at the global perspective, is there still room to grow or has it reached its capacity?
Oh, I think that Asia is just the beginning because Asia is the center of production and savings. You look at the global economy is $70 trillion, and Asia is about 22, so it's about 30%. But in terms of savings, it dominates the world. Most savings in the world are here. What we have seen is that Asia has not developed a market-based fund management business to invest globally, which has to happen for the global economy to function normally because this is the source of capital here. Now we are seeing that this is being treated like emerging economies and people trying to put money into these high-risk emerging economies. That model has been going on for 20 years or so. I think that the future is for the money here to go out rather than coming in. That's the big trend.
And the big market, you mentioned a number of times that China is the big global story.
Yeah, China is half of East Asia. But this region is 2 billion people, has these unique characteristics: a very high savings rate, and the preference for manufacturing. So these are two things that are going to be with us for a long time. That also means that in the West will become capital deficit economies for a long time to come. So to balance this, the capital has to be recycled from the East to the West. Now it's being done by foreign exchange reserves, sovereign wealth funds that typically go there to buy government bonds. It's a very inefficient way for the capital to get redistributed. It has to go into productive sectors in the West.
Okay, we'll come back and expand on that point, but I want to go to JB. JB, looking at Asia, you discussed before that you think the industry here and Asia, it's starting to understand it has a leadership role globally. What is that leadership role and how do you know it's starting to appreciate that position?
Well, I mean, the great point is made that China is effectively going to take economic leadership in the world, but with leadership comes great responsibility. And where I would like to see the leadership coming through from China and Asia in general, firstly is environmental social governance investing and socially responsible investing. Secondly, technological innovation and how technological innovation can create better solutions for investors. And then most interestingly for me, and really a derivative of the first two parts, something that we broke ground here at FundForum Asia is this idea of transparency. And I was very proud to see Andy Xie bring the Transparency Task Force to the audience here in Asia. And I think it's really for China to show leadership in transparency in the value chain for asset management, to show leadership around ESG, and then lastly, come up with innovative technological solutions.
Okay, and that hands the discussion looking at the issue of technology to you, Steve. I mean, is technology the enabler for the industry, or any industry, but particularly asset management industry in Asia? Is it the key to the future?
Absolutely, and no question. And if you're looking after one market in particular, Asia is the center of gravity for technology. If you look at speed and scale, which is technology leverages around that axis, nowhere is technology adoption happening in the world like it is here in Asia. So I think we're absolutely primed to take a leadership role in that area, and you're seeing it dramatically transforming industries across Asia with speed that's been unparalleled in history.
Okay, and looking at the issue of technology, has the take-up been, how would you compare it to Europe, JB? I mean, the take-up of the likes of, robo-advisors, the technology kind of driving Asia, is it as fast as, say, you look at other global markets?
I think the opportunity for Asia is that they can almost learn from the West's mistakes. what tends to happen is that in the West, it's very driven by fashion. So what you end up getting is 40,000 solutions trying to do exactly the same thing and then becoming incredibly competitive. I think where, we use this word fintech and also robo quite loosely, but where I see the real innovation is where you find providers who are coming up with quite innovative, unique solutions to specific problems. And I think those developers who can start with the problem and then come up with a solution are in a far better place. And I would include the likes of South Pole and Sustainalytics in coming up with better MI for ESG. I would think the likes of Pure Group IO, who are coming up with better types of factor attribution, Sharing Alpha, who are effectively providing a crowd ratings platform for fund buyers globally. These are very innovative solutions, whereas what's dominating in the West is, we have so many solutions trying to do the same, front load, robo-advise, portal, when actually what we need is more solutions right the way along the value chain. And this is the opportunity for Asia to actually show genuine leadership.
Okay, you mentioned transparency as one of the key issues that have come out of this forum, and I'll move to you, Andy. Transparency risks, China. Are there risks in the asset management business, and do people expect transparency in that market?
I think the asset management business in here is very immature. A lot of you look at China, it's happened in the last 10 years. Most people who have no experience in managing risk assets. So we have seen a lot of behavior. It's like ramping and propping up. It's pump and dump. All those things that happen in the formal financial industry. And so I think it's a learning process. And you look at how Japan has come through. It's been long time for Japan to have a kind of a relatively professional fund management business. I think it's going to be quite some time in China.
Okay, another one as well, while I've got you, Andy. The markets, who are the new babies on the market, the new emerging markets? We've just had a discussion prior to this about Vietnam. Who are the ones to watch?
Oh, Vietnam has been around for a while. I think Vietnam, in a way that it's like a mini China. It's culturally it's similar. So it will get into manufacturing and the hardware stuff. So Vietnam is interesting that way. But the biggest country in Asia after China is Indonesia. Indonesia has many advantages. It's got a resource endowment that is a complement to China. So I think Indonesia, if it remains politically stable, it will become a great opportunity also.
Okay, Steve, moving on to the issue of, we've had a lot of chat about regulation of the asset management business. The regulator here in Hong Kong mentioned that their eyes would be on the cyber front, on the online products or platforms, and their interest was to protect the customer. But do you feel that the digital technology or technology is a more transparent way of delivering to the customer, or do you think there are risks involved, or is that kind of over-regulation a bit too harsh?
Look, I think there are risks involved with everything, but actually what you have with technology is a greater degree of transparency and auditability. And I think that that's something that regulators really actually aspire to and want. The question is, can the regulators go up the learning curve fast enough to truly appreciate the technology that is being displayed to them? And I think that that's the gating item in regulation, not necessarily the technology itself.
Yeah, and I was going to just interject on that point. I think the biggest danger is that we allow the mainstream asset management industry to almost obfuscate that transparency. I think when you allow it to be the technological innovators, they naturally want to go from point A to point B in the quickest, most efficient, transparent way. Big business has a really good knack of kind of complicating that, over-regulating it, adding too much bureaucracy. That from a transparency point of view, it's very difficult to see the end value to the investor. So technology should be the enabler. It should make things more transparent, should make things more efficient. Has the asset management industry learned the lessons of the past to stop repeating those mistakes in the future.
One other key point that was made was looking at, again, regulation, but there was a push or a suggestion from one member that the industry must be ruthless when it comes to anyone who does break the rules, because the rest of the industry falls and is undermined as a result. I mean, is regulation tough enough, do you think, in Asia? And does it match, or how does it fit in the global perspective? Does it match, say, like
I think that Asia's regulators are not really tough in general. And I see the standard come down globally. You look at what happened in the United States after the last crisis, not many people were penalized compared to the previous crisis. So in Asia, there's from my conversations with some of the regulators, they think that if you are too tough, you kill the market. So that worry is really driving their behavior. So it's you see illegal behavior, and you really see anybody is locked up.
That's interesting. So, and that comes back to, I want to take it back to the digital kind of scenario, and the human role in the asset management business in Asia. I mean, is there a future for humans, and is the regulator kind of being too harsh?
Well, I think so. I think there's a role in the intermediate phase for humanity to leverage technology, and it's truly a multiplier. But at some time, technology is growing in capability so fast that you're going to have less and less human engagement. I think the real challenge is that you can't have the industry evolving that fast if the regulator's not evolving just as fast. So there's kind of a tri-party mix that we have to bring up in that acceleration.
JB, regulator, are they being tough enough in the industry?
Regulation, certainly in the West, the Western model of regulation goes through these cycles of between self-regulation to very punitive over-regulation. And what regulation tends to do is it tends to suppress risk in one part of the market only for it to emerge somewhere else. And a great case in point being out of the great financial crisis of 2008 is that the underlying root cause was one of over-leverage. What the regulators did was effectively suppress the capital controls of the mainstream banks. But what that then led to was an exponential growth in the asset management industry. It's effectively become the de facto banking system in the world today. And so what the question we have to ask ourselves now is not what is the capital solvency of the mainstream banking industry in the world today, what is the capital solvency of the asset management industry?
Okay, looking to kind of wrap up, I'm going to give you guys a final word. Andy, who to watch and what's the biggest change you think we will see in the asset management business in Asia in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think that the key thing is if China is going to open up or not, right? So China has been kind of one step forward, one step backward. So it's been years. Without China opening up, it's very difficult for Asia to compete against North America or Europe. I think that for Asia to be normal, they have to make currencies freely traded and a capital account open. And then because this is the source of capital, the savings are here. The global companies need to come here and to get listed here. Most companies should be listed in China, and they get money directly from the savers here. And of course, the fund management business will play a role in terms of in this market mechanism. But that's the efficient global market depends on how Asia and especially China reform its financial system.
Steve, digital future Asia. Can Asia be the digital revolution leader, or does it need to move faster?
Oh, it's already there. I think we're way ahead of any other market in the world in terms of adoption, in terms of embracing new technology, in terms of business models that are accelerating well beyond what you see in the West. And I think very much when you look from Silicon Valley back, you don't quite appreciate the speed and scale at which it's happening here. And from here, when you look at the US markets, in many areas they're starting to go backwards.
JB, the final word of the 3-day forum. What are your thoughts on kind of Asia and your final word on change and where the market fits?
I've never known to be able to sum up anything in one word, but I'll do my damnedest. Look, the whole idea here is technology. Does this sign the digital death for this industry, or do we adapt? Do we evolve and become effectively more sort of cyborg driven? But we have to remind ourselves here that for 150 years, the Industrial Revolution, the tone was set by machines. For the last 40 years, we've seen already a lot of blue-collar skill roles being lost to robots. I think the challenge, and Martin Ford certainly poses this in his book, Rise of the Robots, is does technology supersede white-collar professional roles over the next 10, 15 years?
Happening already.
There we go.
Hey, thank you very much to our panellists, JB, Andy and Steve. Thank you very
Great.
much for
Thank
joining
you
us.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you also for joining us, and if you want to watch this conversation as well as others, please go to Twitter and look for @FundForum or look for the hashtag FFAsia. Thank you very much for joining us from the Asia Fund Forum 2017 in Hong Kong.